The front door slammed open with a crack that echoed like a gunshot through the empty hallway. And there he was, Elias, soaked to the bone, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, eyes wild with a fury I'd never seen. "You think you can just walk away after everything?" he shouted, his voice breaking like thunder over the Puget Sound. In that split second, as rain pelted the threshold between us, I realized the house we'd fallen in love in wasn't the only thing crumbling. It was us, and the secrets he'd buried deeper than its foundation. That was the night it all unraveled. But let's rewind to the beginning, when Seattle's relentless drizzle felt like a promise rather than a curse. I was Alex Rivera, 32, freshly divorced from a marriage that had sputtered out like a faulty engine on I-5. My ex, Sarah, had taken the apartment in Capitol Hill, the cat, and most of our mutual friends. I got the savings we'd scraped together for a down payment and a vague sense of freedom that tasted more like ash. So, I decided to start over in the suburbs. Edmonds, to be exact. That sleepy stretch of coastline where the ferry horns wailed like lonely ghosts and the houses whispered of second chances. I'd scrolled through listings on Zillow for weeks, dodging the glossy McMansions that screamed midlife crisis, and zeroing in on something with character. A fixer-upper that matched the mess inside me. That's how I found the Victorian on Maple Street. 3 stories of gingerbread trim and bay windows, built in 1902, with a widow's walk that overlooked the Sound like it was keeping vigil for lost ships. The photos showed peeling paint and overgrown roses, but there was a pull, magnetic and inexplicable, like the house was calling my name. My appointment was on a gray Tuesday afternoon in early fall. I pulled up in my beat-up Subaru, wipers slapping rhythmically against the mist, and killed the engine just as a sleek black Prius hummed into the driveway behind me. Out stepped the realtor, tall, lean, with the kind of effortless style that said Seattle native without trying too hard. Khakis rolled at the ankles, a chambray shirt untucked over a white tee, and boat shoes that looked like they'd seen more beaches than boardrooms. His hair was that perfect tousle of chestnut waves, and when he flashed a smile, it hit me like the first sip of craft IPA after a long shift, warm, hoppy, and a little dangerous. "Alex? Elias Hawthorne?" he said, extending a hand that was calloused in all the right places, like he'd spent weekends restoring old boats or chopping firewood for fun. His grip was firm, eyes a piercing hazel that locked onto mine with an intensity that made my pulse stutter. "Heard you were looking for a place with soul. This one's got stories for days." We shook, and I swear the air crackled, charged like the static before a storm rolling in from the Olympics. "Stories are what I'm after," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt, "as long as they don't involve poltergeists." He laughed, a low, rumbling sound that vibrated through the damp air, and led me up the flagstone path, leaves crunching underfoot like brittle bones. The house loomed, its turret casting jagged shadows, and as we stepped inside, the scent hit me. Aged wood, faint lavender from some long-gone garden, and something earthier, like secrets unearthed after a century underground. Elias moved through the space like he owned it, pointing out the original pocket doors, the butler's pantry with its dusty glass knobs, the master suite upstairs where the en-suite bath overlooked the water. "Built by a ship captain for his wife," he explained, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial timbre. "She waited for him every voyage. Legend has it she planted those roses so he'd smell home from the harbor." I leaned against the windowsill, watching ferries slice through the choppy Sound below. Romantic, or tragic, depending on if he made it back. His gaze lingered on me a beat too long. "Most stories are both. That's what makes them stick." By the end of the tour, I was hooked, not just on the house, but on him. We lingered on the widow's walk as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in bruised purples and golds. He asked about my divorce without pity, just a quiet nod when I admitted it was the lies that gutted me most. "Truth's a slippery bastard," he said, echoing my thoughts. "But finding someone who'll chase it down with you? That's rare." I drove home that night with the listing burning a hole in my inbox, but it was Elias's number I saved first. Over the next 2 weeks, we texted about comps and inspections, but it veered quick into the personal. His love for indie folk records spinning on a vintage turntable, my obsession with crafting IPAs in my garage. He recommended a dive bar in Ballard for the best fish and chips. I countered with a hike up Discovery Park where the cedars swallowed you whole. The offer went in on a Friday, accepted by Monday. Closing was a whirlwind of paperwork and wire transfers, but Elias made it feel like an adventure, sneaking me into the backyard to harvest blackberries for a victory pie that never materialized because we got lost in conversation instead. To new beginnings, he toasted with lukewarm coffee from a thermos, our knees brushing under the splintered picnic table. That was when the spark ignited into something fiercer. One evening, after I'd signed the last escrow doc, he invited me to celebrate at his place, a craftsman bungalow in Fremont, all exposed beams and shelves groaning with dog-eared paperbacks. We cracked open a bottle of Pinot Noir from the Columbia Valley, and as the vinyl hummed with Fleet Foxes, he leaned in. Alex, there's something about you, like you've been waiting for this house, or maybe for the right story to walk into. Our first kiss tasted like rain and possibility, slow and searching, his hand cupping my jaw like I was the fragile thing worth preserving. In that moment, tangled on his threadbare couch, I felt seen. Not as the guy nursing a broken heart, but as Alex, whole and hungry for more. We didn't rush. It was tentative, exploratory, like mapping the uncharted corners of each other. Elias confessed he'd been single for years, burned by a college love that fizzled under family pressure. They wanted the picket fence version, he murmured against my neck. I wanted real. Me too, I whispered, and meant it. For the first time since the divorce, hope didn't feel like a dirty word. Moving in was chaos. Boxes stacked like Jenga towers. My sister's taunting texts about, finally nesting, bro? But Elias was there every weekend, hauling furniture in his Prius like a one-man U-Haul. We'd collapse on the unfinished floors with takeout from the Greek spot in Linwood, plotting renovations over falafel. He sketched blueprints on napkins, dreaming of a chef's kitchen where we'd host brunches for friends who didn't yet exist. This place is us now, he'd say, tracing the curve of my shoulder. Our blank canvas. But canvases hide stains if you don't look close. The first hint came during a late-night inventory of the attic. Amid moth-eaten trunks and yellowed ledgers, I unearthed a shoebox of letters, tied with frayed twine. The handwriting was elegant, looping script from another era. My dearest Elias, wait for me, as I wait for the sea to still. Not our Elias, I realized, but the captain's wife, addressing her love. The dates spanned 1901 to 1905, ending abruptly with a single line. He never returned. The waves claimed him, and now they call for me. Chills prickled my skin, not from ghost stories, but the echo of loss. I showed Elias the next day, and his face tightened, hazel eyes darkening like storm clouds over the sound. Heavy stuff, he said, too quickly, setting the box aside. But that's history. We've got our own to write. I let it slide, chalking it up to the house's weight settling into me. But then Oscar entered the frame, uninvited and sharp as a shattered pane. It started with a knock during a paint-splattered Saturday. Elias and I were taping trim in the living room, NPR droning about the Mariners' latest slump, when the door rattled like it had a grudge. Elias wiped his hands on his jeans and answered, his posture shifting from loose to rigid in an instant. There stood Oscar, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that could cut glass and blonde hair cropped military short. The kind of guy who looked like he'd stepped off a Patagonia catalog. Late 30s, maybe, dressed in crisp chinos and a Henley that hugged his frame like it was tailored for intimidation. Elias, he said, voice smooth as aged bourbon but laced with frost. Fancy seeing you domesticated. Elias's jaw clenched. Oscar, what the hell are you doing here? The air thickened, charged with history I hadn't been briefed on. Oscar's gaze flicked past him to me, appraising, then back. Heard you sold this place. Thought I'd swing by, see if the new owners got taste. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Elias stepped forward, blocking the threshold. We're busy. Renovations. Adulting. Oscar chuckled, low and mirthless. Adulting. Cute. Remember when we used to talk about this house? Back in Portland, over too many whiskeys. He leaned in, voice dropping. You said it was our dream. Before you ghosted. My stomach twisted. Portland? Ghosted? Elias had mentioned a college ex, but this felt deeper, like roots tangled underground. Elias, I said softly, paintbrush hovering midair. He turned, eyes pleading. It's nothing, Alex. Old noise. But Oscar wasn't done. Nothing? Tell him about the ring then. The one you left in my nightstand when you bailed for Seattle. He straightened, all easy confidence masking the barb. Or was that nothing too? The door shut with a decisive click, but the silence roared. Elias paced the foyer, hands raking through his hair. It's not what it sounds like. Oscar's complicated. We dated years ago, post-college. It ended messy because he wanted forever, and I wasn't ready. I set the brush down, heart hammering. And the ring. He stopped, deflating. Impulsive. We were drunk, talking dreams. I bought it as a joke, but he took it seriously. When I left for the real estate gig here, I just vanished. Coward move, I know. Betrayal stung not from the past, but from the omission. You could have told me. Before we. I know. He closed the distance. Hands on my arms, warm and anchoring. I was scared it'd scare you off. This us. It's the first thing that's felt right in forever. We talked it out over cold pizza on the kitchen island. His honesty peeling back layers I'd only glimpsed. Oscar was the whirlwind romance of his 20s. All passion and plans, but it smothered Elias, who craved space to breathe. The ghosting was regret, not malice, and he'd spent years rebuilding alone. You're different, he said, thumb brushing my knuckles. You see the cracks and stay anyway. I believed him because in the quiet hours after, when we'd stripped the floral wallpaper in the bedroom, laughing at the absurd patterns, I felt the truth in his touch. We fell into a rhythm. Weekday texts laced with inside jokes, Friday nights at the Alki Beach bonfires, where we'd share a blanket and watch cargo ships blink like distant fireflies. Elias opened up about his fractured family. Dad a Boeing engineer who bailed after the divorce. Mom a librarian who filled silences with books. I shared my own ghosts. Growing up queer in Tacoma. The closet that choked me until college. The marriage to Sarah as a desperate bid for normalcy. Love bloomed slow, like the rhododendrons unfurling in our yard. But it rooted deep. He met my sister at a Mariners game, charming her with stats on Shohei Ohtani while I pretended not to notice how his knee pressed against mine under the bleachers. I tagged along to his book club in Queen and enduring discussions on Toni Morrison while stealing glances at his animated hands. You're glowing, my best friend Marco texted after a photo of us at Pike Place. Arms slung casual, grins wide. House looks good on you. But Oscar lingered like damp rot, seeping in unbidden. He'd pop up at open houses Elias hosted, just browsing. His presence a chill draft. Once, at a coffee shop in West Seattle, I caught them arguing in low tones outside. Elias's back to the window, Oscar's finger jabbing the air. When Elias slid into the booth later, face flushed, he waved it off. Ex-drama. He won't let go. I pressed because trust is a house of cards in the rain. What does he want? You, Elias said, too honest. To rattle us. Don't let him. I tried. God, I tried. We pushed forward. Hired a contractor for the kitchen. Planted tulip bulbs that promised spring. In the Widow's Walk one crisp November eve, as the sound mirrored a harvest moon, Elias dropped to one knee. Not with a ring, but a keychain carved from driftwood. To the keeper of my stories. We made love there under the stars, slow and reverent, bodies sinking like tides. It was the kind of intimacy that stitches souls, the kind that makes you believe in forever. Then the box of letters resurfaced, not by accident. I'd tucked it in the hall closet, but one stormy afternoon, while Elias was at a showing, I pulled it out, drawn by the weight of unanswered questions. The final missive wasn't just farewell. It was accusation. You've betrayed us all, Elias. The sea forgives, but I cannot. Oscar knows. Tell him or the waves will. Oscar. The name jumped, Anachronistic. Dated 1904. Coincidence, surely the captain's brother, perhaps a family rift. But when Elias returned, mud spattered from the downpour, his eyes found the open box. Alex, what? The name. Oscar. In the letters. His face drained of color, a pallor like fog rolling in. It's nothing. Old family lore. Lore doesn't make you look like you've seen a ghost. He sank onto the stairs, head in hands. All right, truth time. The words tumbled then, jagged and raw. The house wasn't just any listing. It was his inheritance, willed to him by a great-aunt he'd barely known, but tied to Hawthorne blood. The captain was his thrice-great-grandfather, the wife his ancestor. And Oscar? Not the ex I'd met, but a specter from that lineage. Elias's cousin, distant but venomous, who'd contested the will years ago, claiming the property as his birthright. The modern Oscar, the one with the chiseled jaw and grudges, was no coincidence. He was that same bloodline, twisted by resentment into stalking shadows. I didn't tell you because it's poison, Elias confessed, voice cracking. The house came with strings, debts, disputes. Oscar sued, lost, but he's never stopped. Showing up? It's harassment. Alex. He's trying to scare you off, force a sale on his terms. Rage boiled, hot and immediate. And you let me buy into this nightmare without a word? What else are you hiding? Nothing. He surged up, desperate. I love you. This place, it's our fresh start. Oscar's the past, clawing back. But doubt is a termite, gnawing unseen. That night, as rain lashed the panes, I scrolled property records on my laptop, the glow casting accusatory shadows. There it was. Liens filed, dismissed, but whispers in the margins. Rumors of Elias's aunt's untimely end. Whispers of foul play pinned on family feud. Oscar's name looped through court docs like a noose. I confronted him at dawn, coffee cold between us. Is he dangerous? Did you drag me into this for the money? His eyes shattered. God, no. I fell for you the second you stepped out of that Subaru. The house was leverage, mine to sell, free and clear now. Oscar's bluffing. Then why the letters? Why the name? Coincidence twisted into curse. Hawthorne men and their cursed loves. It's folklore. Alex. Don't let it win. I wanted to believe, but the cracks spiderwebbed. Days blurred into tense silences. Elias's touches tentative. My responses clipped. He doubled down. Surveillance cams installed. A restraining order drafted. But Oscar escalated. Anonymous notes slipped under the door. Blood calls to blood. Leave while you can. The climax crashed on a Friday gale, the kind that rattles ferries and floods lowlands. I'd come home early from my graphic design gig in Belltown, arms full of sheetrock samples, to find the front door ajar. Inside, chaos. Furniture appended, letters scattered like confetti from hell. And in the kitchen, Elias and Oscar. Face to face, Oscar's fist cocked, Elias's stance protective over a shattered vase. You son of a bitch, Oscar snarled, veins bulging. This house is mine. Gramps promised it, before your aunt poisoned him for the deed. Lies. Elias shot back, voice steel. She died of grief. You twisted it to steal what wasn't yours. I dropped the samples, the thud pulling their eyes. Oscar whirled, triumph twisting his sneer. Ah, the pretty boy. Elias always did pick him soft. Ask him about the night he left me, the ring, the promises, or how he lied to you about the will. He knew the liens. Used you to launder the title. Elias lunged, but I stepped between, heart thundering. Enough. Both of you, out of my house. Oscar laughed, bitter. Your house? Check the fine print, lover. Hawthorne blood taints it all. He shoved past, pausing at the door. Call me when he breaks you, Alex. I'll be waiting. The door slammed, and Elias crumpled, sobs racking him. He's lying. I swear. But I was already at the laptop, pulling docs, the truth unfolding like a gut punch. The sale wasn't clean. Elias had buried a codicil, a family clause that voided transfer without Oscar's sign-off. Betrayal, not malice, but omission sharp as betrayal. You used me, I whispered, the words ash. No, I protected us. He reached, but I recoiled. Protection or control? Like the captain, like your aunt. Loving in shadows, lying to keep the waves at bay. We shattered there, accusations flying like the storm outside. He begged, I raged, until exhaustion hollowed us. I can't, I said finally, voice numb. Not like this. He left at midnight, Prius taillights fading into the squall, the house echoing with absence. Weeks ground by in grayscale. I finished the Renaissance alone, hired help for the heavy lift, but the heart poured from me. Shiplap walls in soft gray, a kitchen island scarred with intention. Oscar slunk away after the cops paid a visit, the notes ceasing like a curse lifted. But Elias? Radio silence, a void that ached deeper than divorce. Then, one crystalline March morning, as cherry blossoms dusted the lawn like confetti, a package arrived. No return address, but his handwriting unmistakable. Inside, the driftwood keychain and a letter, pages thick as the ones in the attic. Alex? It began, ink smudged like tears. I lied by omission, and it cost me everything worth having. The house was my anchor, but you were my sea, vast and terrifying and true. Oscar's poison runs deep. He confessed to forging docs, twisting history to claim what's not his. I've signed it all over, clean title, yours alone. Not as apology but release. Love isn't possession. It's the grace to let go. Remember the widow's walk? That's us. Watching horizons, hoping for return. If you ever want to build again, not walls but bridges, I'll be here. But if not, know you mended what I broke. You showed me home isn't a place. It's the courage to stay, or the mercy to sail on. Elias. I climbed to the walk that afternoon, wind whipping salt from the sound, the letter clutched like a lifeline. Below, the garden bloomed defiant. Roses he'd planted, tulips I'd buried. The ferries chugged steadfast, carrying strangers to shores unknown. Forgiveness isn't a knot untied. It's a sail mended, hoisted anew. I texted him at sunset, brunch Sunday? My kitchen's lonely. His reply, wouldn't miss it. Bring your heart. I left mine there. We met tentative, over quiche and mimosas, laughter rusty but real. Oscar faded to footnote, a civil suit pending, truth his undoing. Elias and I, we rebuilt, brick by honest brick. Therapy sessions in a Fremont office, where we unpacked ghosts. Weekends kayaking the sound, waves whispering absolution. The house stands now, whole and humming, brunches with Marco and my sister, book club spilling onto the porch. Elias moved his vinyls in last month, the turntable whirring fleet foxes as we paint the nursery. Not for a Hawthorne air, but for the family we'll forge, queer and unapologetic. Roots in soil we tilled together. Love, I've learned, isn't the calm harbor. It's the storm you weather side by side, emerging scarred but seaworthy. And in America's vast, forgiving heart, from Tacoma Mills to Seattle Spires, we found our way home. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood in the kitchen that first solo morning after Elias left. The man who'd sold me a dream had vanished like smoke from a chimney, leaving me with walls that echoed his laugh and counters we'd scrubbed together. I brewed coffee in the French press he'd insisted on. None of that pod crap, Alex. Life's too short. And stared at the sound, where a pod of orchis sliced the surface, black and white against the slate waves. Freedom, they seemed to mock, or just another cage with a better view. Work became my anchor. Those endless hours at the studio tweaking logos for tech startups that promised to disrupt everything but never did. Marco dragged me to dive bars in Georgetown, where the jukebox favored Springsteen and the bartenders poured doubles without judgment. You're too damn pretty to pine, he'd say, clinking his IPA to mine. Plenty of fish in this rainy sea, but none sparked. They were placeholders, echoes of hazel eyes and calloused hands. Nights were worse. The house creaked like it mourned, floorboards groaning under absent steps. I'd climb to the widow's walk, bottle in hand, scanning the horizon for his Prius headlights that never came. The letters from the attic became my ritual. Poring over them by lantern light, tracing the widow's pleas. Elias, my love, the gulls cry your name. Return before the tide claims me. Her Elias, lost to tempests. Mine, adrift in tempests of his making. I wondered if all hawthorns were cursed to love fiercely and flee faster. Oscar, that specter, didn't relent. A week post-storm, another note arrived. This one typed and taped to the mailbox. He'll break you like he broke me. The ring was real. So's the regret. Sell now or lose more than the deed. I crumpled it, but the barbs lodged deep, doubt festering like dry rot. Was Elias's confession full? Had the ring been jest? Or a vow he'd whispered in Portland nights? I drove to the county recorder's office in downtown Everett, rain sluicing the windshield, and pored over microfiche until my eyes burned. The records painted a saga. The house deeded to Elias's aunt in '78 after a bitter probate, Oscar's father, the contesting uncle, disinherited for moral lapses, code for his open queerness in a family that prized appearances. Elias inherited post-aunt's death in '22. A quiet fall down the basement stairs ruled accidental but whispered as suicide. Liens followed, Oscar's doing, frozen when Elias countersued for harassment. No murder, no grand conspiracy, just generations of Hawthorne men devouring their own over scraps of legacy. Relief mingled with rage. Elias hadn't lied about the bones. He'd buried them to protect the flesh. But protection without trust? That's a lock without a key. I texted him once, impulsive at 2 a.m. The Orcas are back. Miss watching with you. No reply. Radio silence, his chosen storm. Spring teased with reluctant sun. Daffodils pushing through mulch like stubborn hopes. I hosted a housewarming, belated, bittersweet, with Marco's crew. Queer artists and baristas. The kind who turn any space into sanctuary. We grilled salmon on the deck, blasted Tegan and Sarah, and danced barefoot on the lawn as dusk bruised the sky. This place sings, Marco said, spinning me under string lights. You did good, River. But midway, as laughter peaked, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A voicemail, Elias's voice, ragged from disuse. Alex, if you're listening. I drove by last night. Lights on, music spilling. Looked like joy. If that's without me, keep it. If not, God, I hope it is. Click. Joy? It was armor thin as rice paper. I slipped away to the widow's walk, replaying the message, wind tugging my shirt like insistent fingers. Below, guests mingled, oblivious, Marco charming a painter with tales of my infamous IPA fails. Elias's words hollowed me. Had I built walls higher than the turret? Or was he right? Had I found footing alone? The package arrived 2 days later, that driftwood lifeline. I read it in the garden, petals shedding like confessions, and wept. Not for loss, but the grace it offered. Bridges he'd written. I traced the keychain's grain, worn smooth by sound-tossed waves, and felt the pull. Not back to chains, but forward to possibility. Sunday brunch dawned crisp. The kind of Pacific Northwest perfect that fools you into forgetting winter's bite. I set the table with thrift store china, mismatched, like us, and whipped up quiche with leeks from the farmer's market, mimosas chilling in an ice bucket. Nervous energy buzzed. I vacuumed twice, lit candles that smelled of cedar and sea salt. When his Prius crunched gravel at 11:15, my heart lurched like a fairy horn. He stepped out hesitant, chambray shirt soft against jeans faded at the knees, hair longer now, curling at the nape. Hazel eyes searched mine, vulnerable as exposed roots. Hey, he said, hands in pockets. Smells amazing. We hugged awkward, brief press of chests, his cologne woodsy and familiar, then settled at the island, plates steaming. Conversation danced light. The Mariner's hot streak, a new indie flick at the SIFF, but undercurrents swirled. His fork paused mid-bite when I mentioned the voicemail. Heard it, I said. You were wrong. Joy's better shared. His smile cracked, tentative. I filed the suit. Oscar's done, settled out of court, NDA and all. House is yours. Ironclad. I nodded, sipping mimosa to steady. Read your letter. Bridges, huh? He set his fork down, elbows on granite. Yeah. Therapy helped unpack the Hawthorne curse. Turns out, it's not blood. It's silence. Dads teaching sons to swallow truths. Ants falling because no one caught them. I won't repeat it. Me neither. I reached across, fingers lacing his. But trust's earned, Elias. No more attics full of ghosts. Swear. His thumb stroked my knuckle, spark reigniting. What now? Now? We eat, then walk the beach, talk real, no scripts. We did. Alki's sands stretched wet and wide, gulls wheeling overhead as we strolled, shoes dangling from hands. He shared the Portland scars. The ring a drunken pact after a Dylan concert. Oscar's intensity a mirror to his own fears of forever. I ran because I saw Dad in him, controlling, cracking under pressure. But you're the exhale. I confessed my doubts, the nights I'd scripted breakups in my head. Thought maybe solo was safer. But safe's just slow death. We paused at a driftwood log, waves nipping toes, and kissed, salt-lipped, sun-warmed. No widow's walk drama. It was promise, not possession. Lips brushing questions, answers in the press. Rebuilding threaded slow. He kept his bungalow at first, sleepovers stretching to weeks. We tackled the nursery together, neutral grays, a mural of sound whales arcing playful. Not rushing kids, but dreaming. Adoption maybe, or fostering the lost boys like us. Therapy became tandem, a Capitol Hill shrink with a rainbow flag and zero bullshit, where we mapped triggers like cartographers. Summer scorched mild, Seattle's anomaly, and we chased it. Kayaks on Lake Union, elbows bumping. Seafair hydro races, cheering horse. A road trip to Olympic hot springs, soaking aches away under lodgepole pines. Elias's vinyls migrated permanent. The turntable thrown in the living room, spinning everything from Coulter Wall's gravel twang to Janelle Monáe's soul fire. Our soundtrack, he called it, pulling me close during cold little heart. Bodies swaying lazy. Marco dubbed us the domestic gays, teasing over brunches where my sister grilled Elias on long-term viability. He won her with stories of his aunt. Not the fall, but her library cart of queer lit smuggled to neighborhood kids. She taught me hiding hurts, but sharing heals. Oscar's shadow lifted fully in July, a certified letter confirming the settlement. Payout slim, but peace priceless. Blood calls to blood, the note read, but this time Elias's script. Let it call elsewhere. We're writing our own. Fall returned, leaves carpeting maple like gold filigree, and with it, depth. We hosted Thanksgiving, turkey brined in my IPA, sides from Marco's Cuban roots, my sister's pumpkin pie lopsided but loved. Around the harvest table, candles guttering, Elias raised a glass. To houses that hold us, and the hands that build them. Eyes met across turkey carcass, and I saw it. Not the captain's vigil, but our own two men, scarred by storms, choosing harbor in each other. Yet humanism whispers nothing's linear. A scare hit in October. Elias's doc flagged a shadow on his lung scan. Smoker's hack from college folly. Biopsy waited, days stretching taut as bowstrings. We paced the widow's walk at dawn, his head on my shoulder, my arms steel around him. If it's bad, he murmured, promise you'll sail on, not sink. Idiot, I choked. We weather together. Always. Benign, the call came, scar tissue, old infection. Relief crashed. Champagne popped at midnight. Bodies celebrating life in the sheets, tender and fierce. It reframed us. Love not eternal youth, but endurance. The quiet heroism of showing up. Winter solstice brought snow, rare and hush, blanketing the Victorian in hush. We strung lights on the turret, a beacon for fairies ghosting the sound. Under the tree, a Fraser fir shedding needles like secrets. A box. Not ring, but deed addendum, his name beside mine. Partners, he said, knee-bent casual. In house, heart, havoc. I pulled him up, yes unspoken but etched. Havoc included. America's pulse thrummed on. Mariners clinching playoffs. Pride floats rainbowing downtown. the grind of commutes on 99. We navigated it intertwined. His listings booming, my designs freelancing bold. The nursery waited, walls whispering welcome. In the end, the house wasn't the revelation. It was the mirror. Elias showed me not just beams and bays, but the bravery in vulnerability. The American dream, not picket fences, but picked battles, won with honesty. Secrets unearthed, we planted truths. Roses for the widow, tulips for tomorrows. And in that garden, as spring rains softened earth, we knelt side by side, hands dirty, futures fertile. Home wasn't found. It was forged, one forgiving storm at a time. The nursery mural took shape over stolen Saturdays. Elias's brushstrokes bold where mine feathered tentative. Whales breaching in cerulean arcs, calves nuzzling flanks, a pod's unbreakable chain against horizon's haze. Symbol of us, he said, dabbing cobalt on my nose, his grin boyish under the drop-cloth turban. Family found, not fated. We'd paused there, paint-flecked and breathless, foreheads touching as the radio crooned Lucinda Williams. Can't let go of what's right in your hand. The words landed heavy, a benediction for the boy we'd soon welcome. Tommy, 8 months old, brown-skinned and wide-eyed, scooped from Seattle's foster churn after his mom's overdose. Paperwork marathons, home studies prying like customs agents. But now, crib assembled, blues and greens a cradle for dreams. Not that it was seamless. Foster to adopts a gauntlet, court dates clashing with Elias's closings. My deadlines blurring into bedtime stories rehearsed on the widow's walk. Tommy's first visit was chaos. Toddler terror at the ferry view, tiny fists battering glass till we distracted with blocks on the rug. Elias scooped him effortless, humming a gravelly lullaby, Down in the Valley, his dad's old tune. While I snapped photos, heart swelling at the tableau. 2 men, makeshift but mighty, piecing a world from holes. Marco officiated the welcome picnic in the backyard. Grill smoke curling lazy as we passed Tommy like contraband. Aunts and uncles cooing over his curls. My sister, teary over pie, pulled me aside. You did it, Alex. Built the life Sarah couldn't touch. Elias overheard, later whispering thanks as we swayed to the hammock's creak. Your family's mine now, all of it. But legacies linger, Hawthorne or not. Oscar's echo resurfaced innocuous. A holiday card postmarked Portland, neutral as newsprint. Congrats on the win. Starting fresh here. No hard waves. Elias burned it in the fire pit, ashes scattering on sound breeze. Closure's a gift, he said, but I saw the flinch. The boy who'd ghosted now ghosted back, a cycle snapped. Our rhythm deepened with Tommy's rhythms. 4 a.m. wakings to bottle-propped feeds. Elias's shifts tag-teaming my freelance haze. We argued petty. Diaper brands, preschool waitlists, but hashed it raw over midnight decaf, his hand on my knee anchor. We're good at this, he'd marvel, tracing my wedding band scar from Sarah days. Messy, but ours. Summer 26 baked the Northwest anomalous again. Heat mirages dancing off asphalt as we packed the Subaru for a Crater Lake loop. Tommy strapped rear-facing, babbling at pines blurring past. Elias drove, playlist eclectic. Dolly's twang to Bad Bunny's bounce. Windows down to whip our hair wild. We camped lakeside, rimfire stars wheeling overhead. Tommy conked in the tent as we whispered futures by lantern glow. Ever think about the house's first family? I asked, his head pillowed on my thigh. Captain and his waiting wife, did they imagine us? He chuckled soft. Nah, but she'd approve. 2 queers raising a brown kid in her roses? Radical grace. Grace, yeah. It threaded our days. Volunteering at the LGBTQ Center in Capitol Hill, where Elias mentored real estate newbies on inclusive listings, and I led design workshops for trans youth sketching identities bold. Tommy toddled there, stacking blocks with kids from fractured homes, his laughter a bridge across chasms we'd crossed. Climax crept subtle, not storm sudden. A letter from the aunt's estate lawyer, unearthing a codicil buried in probate dust. A trust for Hawthorne heirs, earmarked for education, but contested again by a long-lost cousin sniffing blood. Oscar's kin, peripheral but persistent, emailing demands veiled as family reconciliation. Elias tensed, old fractures aching. "Not again," he muttered, crumpling the printout. We lawyered up, pro bono from a queer firm in Pioneer Square, and countersued for peace, but the strain seeped. Sleepless nights, Elias pacing the kitchen like the house's original ghosts. "What if it's endless?" he confessed one dawn, coffee steaming untouched. "Hawthorne's devouring dreams. Will Tommy inherit that?" I pulled him close, heartbeat steady against mine. "Then we rewrite it. No silence, no running. We face it. Together with lawyers and love." The hearing dragged autumn into winter, courtrooms sterile as operating theaters. Oscar's cousin a wiry shadow in the gallery, eyes darting like cornered rats. Testimony peeled Elias raw. Aunt's journals read aloud, her words a scalpel. "Elias, my boy, guard your heart from kin who covet shadows." Validating the trust's intent, blood be damned. Judge ruled swift. Funds dispersed to Tommy's college fund, in spirit of the grantor's equity. Outside, rain sheeting courthouse steps, Elias sagged against me, exhale ragged. "It's over. Really over." "Not over," I corrected, kissing his temple. "Just the intermission." We celebrated quiet. Hot cocoa at the window, Tommy finger-painting trust papers into abstract joy. That night, as snow dusted the widow's walk, Elias knelt again, this time with a ring, white gold, etched with waves. "Alex Rivera, partner in havoc. Marry me? Not for papers, but for us." Tears blurred the facets. Yes, 1,000 times. Wedding was spring 27, backyard affair under blooming dogwoods. Marco officiating in sequins, my sister matron of honor with vows that roasted gentle. Tommy ringbearer, wobbling down the aisle with pillow clutched like treasure. Guests a tapestry. Foster parents, center kids, even Elias's mom, frail but fierce in her wheelchair. Vows exchanged as fairies honked benediction. In storms and sun, I choose you. Flaws, fights, and all. Honeymoon was Portland, ironic full circle. Strolling Alberta's murals, overnighting in a Riverview suite where Elias traced the Willamette's Bend. "No ghosts here," he murmured, bodies entwined lazy. "Just us." Tommy's adoption finalized summer. Court clerk's gavel a heartbeat's echo. We framed the certificate beside the mural, his full name, Tommy Elias Rivera Hawthorne, a banner of belonging. Days blurred bountiful. Preschool co-op where he finger-painted whales. Family hikes up Rattlesnake Ledge. Evenings with vinyl spinning as we three-piled on the couch, his curls tickling my chin. Years layered like sedimentary rock. Tommy hit kindergarten milestones. First lost tooth, soccer goals gold with glee, while Elias climbed to brokerage partner, championing affordable housing in queer corridors. I launched a studio, branding nonprofits that stitched social safety nets. The house evolved. Nursery to big kid room. Attic cleared for home office. Roses rampant as our roots. Betrayals? They tempered us, not broke. Elias's omissions taught vigilance. My rages, restraint. We checked in weekly. Ghost check. All clear? Laughter lightening the load. Oscar faded to myth, a cautionary tale at family dinners. And that's why we talk, kiddo. Humanism's the quiet arc. Not happily ever after fairy dust, but the daily grind glorified. At 38, I caught our reflection in the bay window. Elias graying at temples, me softer at the middle, Tommy tweentall between, debating Marvel versus DC. The sound stretched eternal, fairies ferrying lives like ours. Ordinary miracles, stitched from American cloth. Diverse, durable, deeply flawed. One eve, as autumn gales gathered, we climbed the widow's walk, Tommy wedged between, telescope trained on stars. "Daddy Alex," he asked, breath fogging glass. "What's the best secret this house holds?" Elias and I locked eyes, hands linked behind his back. "You," we chorused, "the love that built it." And in that truth no curses lingered, only the endless sea, calling us home.